right, so welcome to my live stream. So today we're talking about the shocking truths. I'm actually doing a series on the shocking truths to lose that actually. And today we're looking at shocking truth number 4. So stop trying to eat less. And I'm going to share in this live stream. I'm going to share with you. Uh, First of all, I'll just share with you my story, how I discovered this shocking truth, and then we're going to look at why eating less just doesn't work, and then and all the reasons why and the evidence for that. And then we're going to look at okay, so what's the alternative? If we're not eating less, we're being told to lose weight, we just have to eat less and move more. What's the alternative? And so I'll share with you my alternative, and then I'll wrap up, and I'll share with you, if you want to find out more about this, what you can do. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Jules. I live in Australia, and I have a degree in food science, and I've always been a huge food lover. And up until like 3 or 4 years ago, I used to struggle with my weight a lot. And even though I was never super overweight, just that battle to keep my weight and in a reasonable place it was a daily battle. It was a battle is the best way to describe it. And then what happened was I actually discovered how to listen to my body and how to stop dieting, restricting, and doing all the things, and actually eat in a way that feels really good. And it was so when I learned this skill of learning to listen to my body, that's when everything changed. And I actually started to uh, find this balance where I was eating the right amount for me, and my weight naturally became really easy to manage. And so I created this beautiful, healthy relationship with food. So that's my story. So how did I discover that I needed to stop trying to eat less and telling myself that I should be eating less in order to actually get to the weight that I wanted, where my weight wanted to be? So basically, first thing I did was I read a book by Daria Rose, who has a PhD, called Foodist. And in that book, Daria talks about she was someone else who had struggled with dieting and her weight all her life. And that the thing, but she also had a PhD. And so she decided one day, she was like, I'm sick of this. I'm just going to the literature and see and look at the research and see, okay, how am I going to what do I need to do to solve this problem? And the fascinating thing was when she actually looked at the research on her own, she had that skill because she'd been training as a scientist. What she discovered was actually that none of the diets work. And actually, in fact, that dieting and people who diet or restrict or try and eat less, anyone in that camp, it's actually the biggest predictor of weight gain. So it actually it's a bit counterintuitive, but when you think about it, it actually makes sense that when we are restricting and we're doing some sort of crazy thing of trying to eat less, what happens is our brains see that as we can do that for a while, but over time, it either gets tedious, we get sick of it, we don't want to be counting calories, or it's just it's so antisocial, or we can't travel with it. There's so many reasons why it doesn't work. But I think the biggest one is, and that Daria addresses in the book, is just this: when we're restricting, it actually builds desire for food, and it creates this kind of scarcity mindset around food. So then when we when we actually are, when we say we are at a party and there's cake around, we end up overindulging on the cake because we're in this restriction mode. And it's oh, I've got to get all it. Our brain's kind of our body's kind of well, I've got to get the calories in now while I can. And so we go into this cycle of restricting and then overeating, and restricting and overeating. And so what Daria discovered was, she was right, okay, this is really scary, but I'm going to do an experiment and see what happens if I stop dieting. And so she did that. She was like, I'm just going to give it a go. And she's like, worst thing that could happen is a couple of months later, if I've gained heaps of weight, then I can just go back to dieting, because I know I can lose the weight, but I also know that that doesn't work for the long term. But she had that out. And what she discovered, of course, was that when she started eating in a normal way, she stopped the restriction and let herself feel satisfied at meal times, what happened was her weight naturally stabilized, and then it started to go down. And it wasn't fast, it wasn't like, dramatic weight loss results, but it was sustainable. And she kept going with the experiment. And then, she actually passed her goal weight that used to be like this thing that she would always be struggling to achieve. And then she could never stay there. She actually passed that and ended up like being at a lower weight than that, while enjoying food, while like not restricting and like doing any crazy diet stuff. So like in reading Dari's story, I decided to apply that to my own life. And it really, yeah, it like I was amazed how well it worked. And also the other thing that happened for me on my journey was I learned about the importance of mindset and our thoughts. And at the same, like, so kind of around the same time, I was doing some work with a business coach, and she was really big on mindset and really like being intentional with the thoughts that I was thinking. And I was getting great results with the business coaching. And so I was like, right, okay. It just occurred to me, like, if this works for that aspect of life, like, I wonder what would happen if I actually like had to go and tried experimented with like being like more intentional with my thoughts and coaching myself in my relationship with food. So those two things combined, stopping restricting, and then listening, like tuning into my thoughts and learning how to like pay attention to my self-talk that I was having in the moment, and change that self-talk so that it was more positive, and so that I was able to like listen to my body. Like those two things like really made a huge difference. So that's kind of my discovery story. And then what happened was, because I figured this out, I was like, man, I need to help other people do the same. And so I started a coaching group called the Naturally Healthy Club. And it's all around, and this was like 3.5 years ago. And so what I was able to do is actually recreate what the success that I've had for other people. And I created a really simple 2-step process to help other food lovers like me end that war, and end all that struggle, end all that crazy dieting stuff, and actually eat in this really beautiful, sustainable way. And of course, like for them, like that, like we're helping other people actually change their relationship with food. And then the flow and effect of that is that their weight starts to get to be where they want it to be. Slowly and gradually, it heads in the right direction. And so I've been doing that for all 3.5 years, and it's so, and the thing is that it works. Like when we stop trying to eat less, when we stop restricting, it's like this like switch we flip a switch in our head, and that's it really completely changes everything. So let's talk now about like why this idea of eating less, like why that doesn't work. And basically the reason is like there's a number of reasons. First of all, it's like whenever we're having some sort of restriction or dieting rules, like it's really miserable and it's tedious, like counting calories is a pain, and we can't keep doing it. Like we feel miserable, and so it's not sustainable. And sure, we can do it for a while, so we can get some, like, see the number move on the scale, but we can't keep doing it, month after month after month. And so we quit, we stop doing it, we go back to our old patterns of eating, and then of course the weight comes back on. So eating less doesn't work and restricting doesn't work because it's not sustainable. And really, like, if you lose weight for 2 months or 3 months, like in the scheme of things, like making yourself miserable for 3 months, it's so not worth it, because what matters is like having good health and feeling good about yourself for the rest of your life, like for the long term. So yeah, eating less doesn't work because it's miserable. And then the other reason, and it's not sustainable. And then the other reason is that eating less doesn't work because, and like why restriction doesn't work is because there's the physical aspect of hunger. And so if we're if we're actually counting calories and actually setting that intention to eat at a calorie deficit, to eat less calories than our body needs, that actually drives our physical hunger, which makes it really hard to manage for sure. But then the other thing is that it also drives the psychological hunger. So there's like there are actually four different aspects of hunger: physical, and this psychological hunger is probably something that you're not familiar with. But what it is, it's so like you will know, like if you tell a toddler like you can't have those crowns, then all of a sudden all the toddler wants is the crowns, right? So it's the same with us and food. When we tell ourselves we can't have cookies or we can't have sourdough bread or whatever it is food that that we're restricting around, or that we can't eat until we feel satisfied, then that builds this desire and this psychological hunger for either that specific food that we're restricting or just for food in general. And so we can go along like that with that in that restriction mode for a little bit, but then all of a sudden someone offers us a piece of sourdough and we're like devouring the whole loaf, or someone offers us a cookie and like, or we come across a bag of cookies and like the whole bag's gone before we even think about it. And that the reason for this is that psychological hunger piece. And so, what do we do instead? So, if we're not going to be restricting and we're not going to be trying to eat less, what do we do instead? So, what I do in my life and what I do with my clients is I get them to eat until they're satisfied at mealtime. So, we don't want to be eating like, of course, we don't want to be like overeating and feeling stuffed at the end of the meal, but by eating until you feel satisfied at meal times, that switches off this psychological hunger, which means that then you're not going back and overeating later on. And so if we just stop that all those that like most of those overeating sessions, that's when our weight becomes like it just starts to naturally go down and it becomes this easy thing to manage because we're eating until we're satisfied. Our psychological hunger is switched off. Our bodies are feeling satisfied, and our brain feels satisfied. And so when both of those feel satisfied, then we don't have that desire to be going back into the pantry and foraging for more food and going into the fridge because we feel good. We feel satisfied. That's enough. And that the food that we would have eaten otherwise there, that's where the weight loss comes in. Like that's the opportunity here. And so I know it like by stopping trying to eat less and stopping telling ourselves that we eat less, we actually are able, at the end of the day, we actually do eat less, but it comes from us feeling satisfied, which I know it's really counterintuitive. And if you haven't experienced this for yourself, like I know that it can be like, really that can work, but it does. And I've helped hundreds of people from all over the world like apply this and like end that cycle of restriction and overeating and deprivation and feeling bad and actually create, like give themselves permission to enjoy food. And it all like it works. And it's like, and then they feel really good in their body and they're like, oh my goodness, I wish I'd known this so much earlier. So it's so fun when you get this and you feel that sense of ease, like, and that confidence that comes from knowing that you're in control of food, like food's not controlling you. It's such a great place to be. So if any of this is sounding good to you and you're like, yes, Jules, I'm sick of the restriction. I'm sick of trying to eat less and then not being able to do it. And sick of like just feeling like you don't know what to do next. Like you've probably tried so many things, like so many of my clients, like, keto, Atkins, all the things, and low fat in the 80s. Like if you've tried all those things and none of that's worked, the thing I really wanted you to take away from this today is that it's not your fault. It's because any dieting, any restriction is doomed to fail for the long term. Like nobody is successful with diets in the long term. And people can have temporary success, but it's never sustainable. And so it's not your fault if you're in that place where you're struggling with food and your weight's been going up and up and you can't get it to come back down sustainably. And there is another way, is the other thing I want you to know, is that it is possible to change that. And if you're interested in learning more about how to do that, I do have a free class that's on my blog. So if you just go to thestonesoup.com, and it's the 2 tiny habits to lose weight naturally and actually enjoy the process. So in that, I go into more deep detail about the methods that I use to help people. Or if you, so you're welcome to go to my blog, thestonesoup.com, to watch the free class and click on you'll need to go to the naturally healthy tab to find it, or just reach out to me, like send me a message, direct message if you're on Instagram, message me through Instagram, or you can email me, jules@thestonesoup.com. And yeah, I'd love to just hear a bit about your story and see whether we would be a good fit to work together. Okay, so I hope you found this helpful, and tomorrow we've got shocking truth number 5. So I will be back for another live stream then. Okay, talk soon. Bye.